Vergil Ortiz Jr. scores a majority decision over 12 rounds versus Serhii BOHACHUK to capture the WBC Interim 154-pound belt. Now with that W, Vergil moves to 22-0 with 21 KOs, while Serhii falls to 24-2 with 23 KOs. The numbers that are a little more relevant than both gentlemen's records are the judges' scorecards, however. One judge scored it 113-113. Now, 113-113 implies that that judge thought Vergil won 7 rounds and Serhii only won 5 rounds, including the 2 where he scored the knockdown. The other 2 judges saw it that Vergil Ortiz Jr. won 8 rounds and Bohachuk only captured 4 rounds. Now, that implies that Bohachuk was only given credit for 2 rounds in addition to the rounds where he dropped Vergil Ortiz Jr. Those were rounds 1 and round 8. Now, perhaps some of you read the writing on the wall right there in round 1, where the referee just simply waved off the knockdown. From the limited footage of the fight that's out there, I did rewatch that knockdown multiple times, and it was like, okay, look, Bohachuk lands that straight right hand, and Ortiz goes down on one knee and touches the canvas with his glove. It's pretty clearly a knockdown, so I'm not sure what was going through the referee's mind in round 1, but that's kind of gives us an indication of the shape of things to come, as it were. Now, those 2 knockdowns, which happened again in rounds 1 and round 8, notwithstanding, of course, it was a very close fight. It was a terrific fight with tons of action. But after the fact, we hear Robles and Loeffler kind of issue forth the traditional, somewhat cliched lamentations and protestations. What were the judges looking at? To be the champ, you gotta beat the champ. We just heard that one last week from Eddie Hearn. And again from Loeffler, well, if the round's close, you can't give them all to one guy. And it's like, hello, yes, you can do that. They do that. And not to take anything away from Serhii, but I think Team Bohachuk should have read the writing, or should have read the tea leaves before the fight even happened, meaning as soon as the fight was signed for, they should have known what they were in for, which is the ugly truth that, as Paulie Malignaggi would say, boxing is full of, and Serhii is going to need the KO or the TKO in order to retain his interim belt. That's it. He's not going to get the decision. Same thing we saw play out with Israil Madrimov. No way is he getting a decision versus Terence Crawford. Now, why is that? Well, simply because neither Madrimov nor Bohachuk are part of the boxing industry or the boxing machinery's narrative of choice at the moment. Granted, there's a big difference between comparing Madrimov and Crawford in terms of name recognition to Bohachuk and Ortiz, but surely Team Bohachuk knew that going into this fight, that in spite of holding the belt, that they were in fact the B side. Now, when you're in that position, it's a tough one for the trainer, in this case Manny Robles, because a trainer who has a champion who is also about to be the B side in his next fight, that trainer has to be a bit of a magician, a bit of a psychologist, and a bit of a wizard, because you have to treat your fighter like they're the champ, because they are the champ. You have to address them as that every single day when they walk into the gym. You got to be like, hey champ, how you doing? You got to be upbeat. Everybody else in the gym should address that fighter as champ, because he or she earned that right. It's just a simple gym etiquette, gym respect rule. But by the same token, the burden falls upon Manny Robles and any of his assistants to know and understand that their fighter must get a KO in order to get this W. So that being said, they don't want to necessarily let that on to their fighter. They don't want to tell their fighter, hey man, like, let's be realistic. You know, you're really the B-side in this fight. Like that's no way to build up a fighter to put in a hard training camp and to enter the ring. That means the trainer needs to devise a game plan, not necessarily let his fighter know why, but let him know, you know, this is what we're going to do, and these are the changes we need to make in this camp in order for us to keep our belt, right, champ? We want to keep our belt. We're going to beat this guy up. Okay, so knowing the lay of the land realistically, I'm going to say that Bohachuk lost the fight in the lead up, in the training camp. Here's why. Again, knowing that he needs that KO or a TKO, what are Serhei's best weapons to do so? Well, it's no secret, he's got a terrific jab, straight right hand. They flow together so well from the outside. That's completely understandable because Bohachuk was raised in the Ukrainian or Eastern European boxing amateur style. And so the game there is to stay bouncing on the feet, dart in with the jab, dart straight back out, move laterally, reset to find your jab again, and once you get your distance set, then you come with that straight 1-2 and you get your opponent out of there. Now, to Team Bohachuk's credit, they did decide to move him to the United States, to Southern California, where he lives and trains. And that's a very smart move in order to have a fighter with an Eastern European style adapt to the professional style in the United States. That Eastern European style is mainly, you know, fighting from the outside. It's not fighting at mid-range, and certainly not fighting on the inside toe-to-toe. The first line of defense for that Eastern European style is the footwork. So simply by living and training in Southern California, Bohachuk would have access to sparring partners from both Mexico and, say, East Coast United States, where fighters sort of favor a little bit more of a slick style, you know, lots of slipping and dipping at mid-range, and then the Mexicans fighters, you know, being willing to stand toe-to-toe and fight hard on the inside. So at all points or at all ranges, I'll give Serhei credit. It's clear that he's been in the ring sparring hard rounds at both mid-range and in close. However, it's almost as if he's gotten too comfortable in those ranges. So what he does is he puts up the double high guard, kind of shells up, and will absorb punches. But he has not yet added the waist movement, which is essential for him to get off hard body shots on the inside or even at mid-range. You know, he does. He needs to find other defensive moves at mid-range and close range, other than just the double high guard shell up. You need to be able to break at your waist and bob and weave underneath, or sometimes maybe even lean back. Just mixing it up a little more than what he's doing. The way he works the mid and close range, Bohachuk simply will shell up to block punches and then look for single shot openings to counter with, which he was effective with. And then again, that's from all the sparring rounds he's gotten in. But his technical skill set at both those ranges is missing those other defensive moves. Now, the thing with fighting like that on the mid-range or inside, it's more of a feel type thing than it is visual, simply because, especially once you're in close, I mean, you're not going to see punches, and you're not necessarily going to see where your target area is. For example, if you're looking at your opponent's chest, then you know where their body is, but you also know their head is the thing that's at the end of their neck, so you don't need to look up and make eye contact with the head. But it's a completely different mindset in terms of defending, predicting what's coming next, and firing your own shots. The other key aspect of inside fighting that I didn't see from Bohachuk is setting patterns and breaking them. So, for example, you could fire 2 body shots with your left hand and then a right hand to the head. You could do that a couple of times and then change it up. One body shot with the left hand, 1 head shot with your left hand, and then a right hand. But the point is here, this is just something that you've got to be forced to do in the sparring rounds. You're going to make mistakes, so you're going to eat some shots in sparring, but it's just, it's a necessary part of the learning process. I don't know whether Manny Robles has forced or asked Bohachuk to do these types of movements. But even if they did practice it for a little bit, I mean, under the pressure of a 12-round world title fight, you know, we all revert to what we know best, and that's usually what we our sort of original, so to speak, fighting style. So I don't want to sound overly critical of Serhei's mid-range inside fighting. My point here is knowing the urgency of the fact that he needs a KO. He either needs to be told, if you're gonna stand there toe-to-toe with Ortiz, you better knock him out, meaning you gotta put those punches together better, you gotta move your head a little bit more, or you better just get back way on the outside and pick him off with your 1-2 repeatedly. Now let's take a look at Vergil ORTIZ Jr. Well, I think right off the bat, Vergil realized that he doesn't want to try to be on the outside and be slick, because that's the error he made in round 1. He's kind of like slipping and dipping and moving around on the outside, and then Bohachuk clipped him with that right hand and he took a knee. Harvey Doc waved it off as if it was a slip, but thank goodness they decided to check the instant replay and rule it a knockdown. I honestly, again, don't know how Harvey Doc missed that. It was a clear straight right hand from Bohachuk, and then Vergil goes straight down on one knee. But there you have it. So what worked out well for Ortiz was that Bohachuk was a willing partner in that he was willing to come forward. He didn't just want to stay on the outside and move around. So simply by the virtue of Bohachuk coming forward, Vergil was able to fight the fight at mid-range and close range, which is in his favor. The huge plus with making your opponent miss is that they have to expend extra energy in order to make their punch stop, because they didn't hit anything, they hit air. So that is very draining, to stop your own punch and then bring it back. Also, to Vergil's credit, when he got dropped for the second time in the 8th round, he did get a fire lit under him internally, and he poured it on for the rest of that round. So I got to give him credit for just stepping it up when he needed to. And then finally, according to Loeffler, all 3 judges gave the last 3 rounds to Ortiz. And I mean, I suppose we could see it that way. He did surge in the last few rounds. Now, I will admit that I'm missing information because I have not been able to find footage of the full fight. Surprise, surprise, right? I wonder if DAZN will be forthcoming and put all 12 rounds up there. Or perhaps somebody else who has the footage might put it up there, if but briefly. In any case, I can't really give you a round by round number of rounds, how many rounds I think each fighter won. But once again, I just don't feel that no matter what, no matter how close the fight was, how great a fight it was, Team Bohachuk cannot be so naive as to think that things will go in their favor in a close fight. Now let's not forget that part of the reason that Ortiz is able to surge in those final 3 rounds is that he's been fighting 12 rounders since 2019, and this is only Serhei's 2nd outing at 12 rounds. So again, we have a situation similar to Crawford versus Madrimov in terms of experience at going the 12-round distance. Now, having said all that in terms of a technical, tactical breakdown between Bohachuk and Vergil ORTIZ Jr., I'm going to circle back to what Paul Malignaggi said after he was handed an L versus Juan Diaz in Houston, Texas. He's absolutely right, and I'm going to make another video on sort of the shenanigans at the 154-pound division, because quite honestly, between Fundora Tszyu and this fight, yeah, it's It's clear to me that the puppeteers are going to have certain fighters win and certain fighters lose, and I'm not so sure how much we as boxing fans are expected to believe their narrative, but they're going to force their narrative upon us nevertheless. So in closing, I guess I'm just glad that we're dealing with a controversy that has something other than dealing with gender and whether someone's male or female. And that said, if you enjoyed this breakdown, please comment below and leave your thoughts. Please also feel free to scroll over to the right and leave a super thanks. Or you can head over to buymeacoffee.com/Hamaguchi-fight and purchase a coffee. If you would like to join us on our membership site, you can do so for a mere $3 a month. Thanks again for listening.